Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lucas here, and in this video we're going to take a look at Evernote to see how well we can use it in 2022. Excited to try out its task management functionality, see how it's evolved, because I've been an Evernote user for many years actually, and the very first video on this channel was about Evernote too. Unfortunately, back then, it was for a not so positive reason. I wanted to move away from Evernote. I used the desktop and mobile apps to great satisfaction for a long time, especially because they were so fast, so quick to use. Unfortunately, that advantage completely disappeared with some of its forced updates. Whether it's on web, whether it's the desktop app or the mobile app, it just became super sluggish. That's why I moved away from it, and I guess the silver lining is it motivated me to try out other tools and eventually record my journey and start this YouTube channel. So it kind of comes full circle here. Let's return to Evernote, see how it's evolved in 2022 and how well you can use it as a task manager, especially if you follow the Getting Things Done methodology. So let's dive right in. For the sake of this tutorial, we're going to pretend to be Cody Cat Lover. And if you didn't guess it yet, Cody's very much into cats. That's a recurring theme that we'll be seeing throughout this tutorial. If you have any widgets in your home screen here, I suggest just remove those. We're going to start from scratch here with a clean slate. And I want to take you to the settings here. First of all, you can set up some more simple preferences, such as the theme. Dark or light, that's always good to have. I prefer dark mode, but I feel like light mode is a bit easier to see in a video, so that's why I'm going to switch back here. And then let's move to account info to just make sure every setting is the way it should be. Under personal settings, you can set up your name, display language, as well as some miscellaneous settings about email notifications, which I usually turn off. This is one I'm interested in, the web clients, and it asks me to enable version 10 plus web clients. Performance for large accounts may be slow. Interesting, as this is the exact reason I left Evernote behind more than a year ago now. It just started getting slow, and yes, I had a large account, although I had under 1,000 notes, so it wasn't even that large, and I still noticed it was just unbearably slow, unusable really. So the fact that it's showing up here gives me a bit of pause. For this tutorial, we're not going to be expanding our account into a large one, but if you find yourself waiting for the app to load, this may be a setting to help you with that, or after all, still go back to Evernote Legacy. And I'm skipping some of the more sensitive settings here, but under reminders, you can get a daily digest of your upcoming reminders. I like to turn that on, because my system is filled with reminders I set up for myself. Context sources, not to be confused with anything related to GTD contexts. It feels like they just have this collaboration with a couple of these companies and publishers. So it shows up when you Google stuff, for example, they give you suggested content. It's trash. I think it's trash. Just disable it all. You can also connect a couple of services, the most useful for most folks probably being Apple and Google, especially the calendar and the Drive integration, so you can directly add Google Drive files into your notes. This is something they've had for a while, even in Evernote Legacy. This is supported and it's a great feature, so I recommend you turn it on if you do use Google Drive. For capturing, you'll want to make sure you have an inbox. Inside of Evernote, this has to be a notebook. In fact, it should be the default notebook. When you've started your account, you will have one of those. It's the notebook where everything ends up initially, unless you change it during capturing. So it's a great use for it, really. And you can rename it. You can press the three dots here to rename your notebook, add it to shortcuts, which I believe I haven't done yet. So that's something we can also do here, just for more easy access if we need it. And then when we select new, we can add a new note or task. But in this tutorial, we're going to be mostly focusing on notes. I'll explain why later on. We can give it a title here. And you'll see that by default, the notebook it ends up in is inbox. And the same is true for the mobile experience. So with the app, there is a great widget that I really recommend you put on your home screen because it allows you to add a new item with just the press of a button. And you can see that item here now. So it synchronizes very quickly too. Now let's look at one of Evernote's most exciting features for capturing, which is their web clipper. So here I'm on my website. I've got an article that's pretty long. It has some design elements to it as well. So saving this somewhere would be difficult with many apps, but not with Evernote. Once you've downloaded the Chrome or other browser extension, you can press it and it says loading web clipper, because that's what this is. It can clip, or in other words, cut and paste into your system any type of content on the web. And you can see you can have different formats. So if I select full page, it includes the design. However, and what I like to do is selecting simplified article will remove many of these elements, but retain what's important for you to properly read it. Paragraphs, headings, etc. This is really good. You can also select the notebook for it to end up in. Obviously, that's going to have to be the inbox. We want to remove any tagging for now because this is just an empty item for clipping purposes. In fact, we can make that a bit easier on ourselves in the future. When we press settings here, we're taken to a menu. There, what we want to do is, instead of use smart filing, select use inbox. So what this means is, by default, anything you clip will be sent here, and that's what we want. And the same goes for tag selection. You can either use quote-unquote smart filing, but that's not smart enough for us. Or we can add a default tag, but I don't see the point of that. So just leave both of these empty and it will have no tags by default. The rest we can skip for now, but you can see that it's a pretty extensive setting menu for something as simple as a Chrome extension, which tells you they've really put thought into this. It's really one of the best ways to save items from the web. Now we're saving it, it's syncing, we have to wait, and there we go. It's saved. And now you can see in the inbox we have the article, including the title, including the link to the source, including all the images, the text. And because we use that simplified view, we can have a very easy reading experience when we read it either here or perhaps on our phone or tablet. In addition, you can also use the mobile apps sharing functionality to capture something directly into the inbox from mobile devices. You can even email items into your inbox. For that, you just can go back to your settings, go to account summary here, and scroll all the way down. You'll see a setting named email notes to, and it will have an email handle given to you by Evernote. As it says here, you can email notes, snapshots, and audio clips directly into your account. Emailed notes will go directly into your default notebook, which, if you follow the tutorial, you'll find that to be your inbox. So that's perfect. It means you have all these different ways to capture very thoroughly. Before we dive into processing these items, let's first have a look at how we've structured Evernote. What kind of notebooks, in other words, lists do we have, labels perhaps, to organize our system here. Notebooks are the main taxonomy where everything lives inside of, basically. It's still a note taker, and we're just trying to hack it to become more like a task manager. So there will be some reinterpretation going on here as well. We already looked at the inbox, which is the default list, and you can see that I've numbered them as well. The reason is that by default, and I didn't find a way to reorder them, they are ordered on alphabetical order. So if you want the inbox to naturally show up above and perhaps also sort by horizon of focus, if you're a GTDer, this is the way to do it. Just make sure to number them and that will decide their placement. You can also stack notebooks. That's what I've done here. You can see I've stacked them into my tasks and projects. And below there, you will see specific project lists, such as this one. Remember, Cody cat lover. So of course, one of his projects is to hold a cat meetup, and it's a defined outcome, but it has multiple steps. What we did here was to capture an article, just like we did before here, about how to organize a meetup. So that's the next action that lives inside of that project list. And how we process that, we'll look at in just a moment. Another one is standalone items. So outcomes that can be achieved on their own can live here. There's a not now list. In fact, it's a stacked list. Under that, you can bundle various types of items that you may want to do later. Here, a common example is trips, travels you want to make in the future. Anything you can think of in any way you want to categorize it, I recommend doing it in this way. If you want to bundle lists under these main categories as seen here, what you can do is first create a notebook. And from there, for example, here I have the reference material list, which I've called the personal wiki. If I were to categorize that, you can press the 3 buttons here and then select add to stack, and you can create a new one or select an existing one. So that's how I've done this. The last example of that is the higher horizon. Listing my responsibilities is something I can do here. My SMART goals, I can define them here. My vision and my purpose. That's where those notes can live. Now let's see how we can make sense of items that end up into our inbox. As you can see, we have 3 items sitting here. It's a quick note we've made on mobile, another one here, and an item that we've captured. So how does that work inside of Evernote? That's where we'll actually have a look at tags. And you can see that you can also stack these tags in various ways, which is great. So what I've done here is add a couple of tag categories. The first being contacts. This is something we can use for agenda items. If we have an individual that we need to speak to something about, ask a question, or if we have a meeting that's coming up, we'll want to have a list available to inform us exactly what are the talking points within that setting. So that's where you can apply these tags to. You can name it anything. In this case, Cody Cat Lover has a friend named Freddy Feline, and when we press it, we can see that we're actually waiting for Freddy for an RSVP. An RSVP for what? Well, that's the cat meetup. So it's all nicely interlinked here. And you can see I applied multiple tags because the other one, waiting for, is also a common GTD tag you can apply. And that's what I've done by applying it at the bottom here. So when you've got a note, you can add a tag by either clicking here or typing here. These are examples of normal tags. They have their own name and it's pretty clear what it stands for. And you could argue that's the case for all of them. We also have a context tag, which is important for actionable items. What you can see here, though, is I've applied these symbols in front of them. And that's because you will likely have many of these. It's difficult to quickly find them if you just type them by their name. Perhaps you have a home context tag, but perhaps you also have a home reference tag, and you don't want to confuse those. That's why I always label reference items with a dash and these with a double colon, and that way it's easier to quickly find them. The same goes for time estimated. It has a less than symbol, and it actually makes sense because it should take 10 minutes or less, 30 minutes or less, etc. That's our estimate. So let's imagine, if we go back to the inbox here, that this is an actionable item. It's an article we've clipped and we want to read it. We've already done all the work when it comes to the makeup because that's what the clipper's done. It has all the contents available for us, including the title. Here we can add the tags. So let's press plus. And first of all, add the next action tag. We can just type to add, and right there it already shows it. It's a next action. Now let's add the context. And again, we just start with the symbol, and that way every context we've defined in our system is easily retrievable. This is something we want to read, so we add the read context. It's pretty long and it has a few videos, so let's assume that this takes us about 30 minutes to actually complete. So we add this symbol, and there we have every time we've predefined in our system available as well. Now the last thing we'll want to do is actually move it out of the inbox. We can select it from there and press Move Note. And here we can select an actionable list. Standalone items, let's put it there for now. What you can also do if you want to have a more elaborate system is group these notebooks by their area of focus. Perhaps you have a personal growth area of focus. That's something where this could end up in, but that's up to you. Then you can move it in there. And now we have one item less and we're on our way to clearing out the inbox. You can imagine how easy this is at scale. You can do this very easily every single day once you filled up your inbox to add the tags, move the notes into their appropriate place. If you want to quickly and easily find next actions with a certain context, you can do so by combining these tags and turning them into a shortcut. And that's what I've done here. An example here is a combined filter that has both the next tag as well as the home tag. And you can even rename it. The way to do that is by searching for it and then saving that search. So let's do the same thing here, but instead create a reading list. Now, I found it to be a bit weird in terms of how to set this up. You actually have to search for something and then you have to add the filters after that. And it seems to actually remove the original syntax of what you searched for. So you have to kind of get used to that. But for now, let's just add the filters and then selecting the following tags. Next, and context is read. And that's actually it. So now we have this list. We can save the search here. And from there, we can rename it. So we can do my reading list. And importantly, you want to make sure to add it to shortcuts. And now you can see when I navigate to my reading list, it automatically has these tags associated with them. So I don't even have to think about finding these reading items anymore in the future. All I have to do is process them when they end up in my inbox, knowing that once I've done it correctly, it will just end up here. So now I actually have two different projects that these items are related to. The first is about the cat meetup that I want to organize. So I've saved an article from meetup.com explaining to me how does it actually work, what do I need to take into account. And the other one is a Todoist tutorial. So a completely different project. You can also see it here. And you can actually see it in various different ways too. If you want to, for example, change the view, you can do that here. And you can select the card view. You can select the snippet view we just saw. We can select the side list or the top list. And if you select that one, you'll have the most information available to you before clicking the item itself. Location means which notebook is it a part of. So you can translate this to the related project. It's a really great flexible system that allows you to view information in the way you prefer. Now, I wouldn't prefer this actually. I like things to be vertically divided. So I sacrifice that extra piece of information for the view that I prefer. You can also expand the note for an even better reading experience once you're ready to engage. As you already introduced it in an earlier part of the video, for reference, I have a separate notebook here. I call it the personal wiki. Obviously, you can name it anything you want. And so far, it just has one article. It's an article about cats. How intelligent are they? And obviously, Cody would really like that. And perhaps he would like to share it with his friend Peter Lover in the future. How can you easily save that in your system? That's where these reference tags come into play that I've already shown. And you can add them just as you would with an actionable item. The reason I don't like to categorize these by lists, which you could do, you could create a stack just like with the bucket list items here, is that many reference items may have multiple tags associated with them. For example, this one is organized both by their type of reference item, in this case is an article, as well as the subject it's about. And that wouldn't be as easy to do if we had the list-only approach. Let's turn this into practice and assume that we have read this article that we just clipped. What we need to do to move it out of the actionable list is first of all change the tags. Let's do that now and just press backspace to remove them. Now we can type to add. So as you remember, for reference, we start with the dash. And you can either select what already exists, and in this case we can select article. But we also want to group it by subject. So that's where we can, for example, type self-development. And then click it to create. And perhaps even another one. Let's select GTD. So you can create as many of these as you want. And lastly, you just want to make sure to move it to the reference notebook so that it's all nice and clean. And there you go. We marked a reading item complete, so to speak, and moved it into the reference file. If you don't want to move it anywhere after reading it, you can just delete the note, of course. That way it's out of your system. Okay, now let's address the elephant in the room here. What about Evernote Tasks? This is something they introduced to Evernote last year, and you may be surprised that I'm only talking about it now. Well, it's a bit underwhelming. So I really tried my best to make that work. I was actually excited to see that Evernote added this functionality. If we can mark tasks complete and archive them instead of deleting the notes, that's a big step up. So the first way I tried doing this is by creating a task from this menu here. So you can create the task, you can give it a title, but right there you can see it must be assigned to a note. And that's where it first gave me pause. So these aren't standalone items on equal footing with a note. Instead, they have to live inside of a note. That's where I started thinking, well, that kind of defeats the purpose of it. I want to have that separation, not for it to become part of it. So that's one thing, and you can see the result of that here. The note has the exact same title as the task. I can mark the task complete, and it does show here in the search results or in the list view. So that's not bad, but once I mark it complete, it still lives in there. The problem isn't solved. I would still need to delete the notes for it to actually be removed from my actionable view. And it gets worse because at least you would think, well, there should be an easy way to find these tasks. So let me show you what happens. Let's say I want to search for a task. And again, I can just type something here, but then remove filters and it kind of resets. Then I select the filter. You can select contains and it has all these different types of elements into it. Now again, to Evernote's credit, it's very rich in its note-taking functionality, so you can filter very extensively. But one thing I would want to be able to filter for is items that have tasks. That would perhaps make the next tag redundant if I can, through this filter, separate tasks from reference material, for example. However, I select it, no result. Why? I have tasks, they're right here. But when I search for it, there's no results. It's not really effective for GTD purposes. I don't see myself using it. If it was a separate entity, perhaps I would, but I recommend you to actually not use these tasks and instead just reinterpret notes as tasks through the tagging functionality. So that concludes the Evernote tutorial here, and I have mixed feelings, although I'm a bit relieved to see that it's become fast to use. The big caveat there though is it was a very small demo account, so let me know in the comments how fast is Evernote for you if you're a heavy user, if you have hundreds or even thousands of notes in there. I'm curious to hear from your experiences. Overall though, through its diverse notebook functionality and stacked notebooks, tags, filters, safe searches, you can get very far and use it perfectly well as a GTD system. So I would definitely give it my stamp of approval for that use case. Let me know in the comments what you think, and then I'll see you in the next video.